Okay, so in this video we're looking at what it means to be transgender or transsexual. Now most of the time, the gender identity that someone has matches their biological sex and what is expected of them in society. However, that is not always the case. Sometimes the gender someone is assigned when they're born doesn't match the gender identity that they actually develop. Now, transgender individuals are people whose gender identity, gender expression, or behavior does not conform to that typically associated with the sex they were born as, or the gender they were assigned at birth. They feel trapped in the body of the opposite gender. So they might have the genetics and the genitalia of a male, but feel like a female inside, or vice versa. And usually these individuals will report feeling this way for as long as they can actually remember, which makes sense because remember, gender identity seems to be developing around age 3, which is also where we start to hold on to memories. There is something called infantile amnesia, and before age 3, we don't really seem to have any memories. It's very hard to remember anything from before that time. So it makes sense that as far back as we physically have memories is also around the same time that gender identity is developing. So as far back as they can remember, they've always felt this way, which is really suggesting that this is not something that's happened later in life. As soon as their gender identity developed, they were already experiencing this. Now, on the other hand, we then got people that are transsexual. So this is a person who seeks or undergoes a social transition from male to female or female to male. So the difference here, a person that's transgender might feel trapped in the opposite body, but they've not chosen to make that social transition to the opposite gender yet. A transsexual person is someone that is now socially living their life as the other gender. So this might include gender reassignment surgery, which is when their genitalia are transformed to look like the opposite sex, but not necessarily. Not everyone has that surgery. Even when they do have the surgery, it is just the outside that is changed. The reproductive organs still stay the same, so they are unable to reproduce, but they are able to have sex. Others might take hormone replacement therapy, where women that are transitioning to men will then start to grow facial and body hair, and men will be able to grow breasts, for example. When it comes to the causes for both of these, it's, honestly, it's unclear. Research is still figuring this out, but it seems to be, at least what research shows so far, a combination of sex hormones and other factors. So, for example, like genetic influences, which seem to be influencing the structure of the brain during prenatal development. So before the baby is even born, if there's the right or a certain combination of hormones, sex hormones and genetic influences, that can then cause the brain to become sexually differentiated in one direction during prenatal development, while the genitals develop in another. So a fetus might develop the genitalia of a male, but their brain is developing as a female. Now, this is a quick myth check that I usually do in class before I cover that slide, but we'll discuss it now. So only people who have sex change operations are transsexuals. You hopefully already know now that the answer is false, because as I mentioned, not everyone has gender reassignment surgery. There are many transsexual men and women that choose not to, for multiple reasons, but that might include that they want to avoid the pain and the complications that come with that. It could also be because it's extremely expensive. So not all transsexuals have a sex change operation. Men who wear women's clothes are transsexuals. False. Some are. But others cross-dress for other reasons, not because they are transsexual. So for example, some people will cross-dress because it makes them feel sexually aroused. Or you might have, for example, some gay males, such as drag queens, might dress in women's clothing because they enjoy it, not necessarily because they are transsexual. So there are other reasons that men do that. Transsexualism is just a form of homosexuality. False. your gender identity and your sexual orientation are independent. They are not the same thing. Just because your gender identity is one way does not have any influence on your sexual orientation. In fact, people that are gay usually have a gender identity that is consistent with their biological sex, meaning most lesbians still have a female gender identity and most gay men have a male gender identity. Not always, again, but the point is they are attracted to members of their own gender. It does not necessarily mean that they feel trapped in the body of the opposite gender.